This video covers the IGCSE Biology Objective 4.1.1 on the 2025 CAIE syllabus to list the chemical elements that make up carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. So first of all, let's take a look at carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is one of the biological molecules that you need to know about in the syllabus. And there are two types of carbohydrate molecules. There's what we call a simple carbohydrate molecule, and then there are complex carbohydrate molecules. These two are then further divided into various categories. So we have what are called monosaccharides. Saccharides just refer to the number of sugar rings that are in the actual chemical, and I'll show you that in a minute. Monosaccharide means one sugar. Disaccharide refers to two sugars, and polysaccharide refers to many sugars. So mono is one, di is two, poly is many. All right, so in this particular type of biological molecule, the monosaccharide that we are referring to is just what we call a carbon ring. It's actually 5 carbons that are connected in a ring structure, and then the 6th corner is an oxygen element, and so that forms what we call a carbon ring. So a monosaccharide is just one carbon ring. A disaccharide would be 2 carbon rings joined together, and a polysaccharide would be many. It could be hundreds of carbon rings joined together, the same type of structure, the 5 carbons with the 1 oxygen forming the 6-sided structure. And so in this carbon ring, we have only 3 elements. We have carbon, we have hydrogen, and we have oxygen. And you can see there, this is one example of a monosaccharide, and we'll see more in another video, but this is one example of a monosaccharide, and you can see there it's just carbons, hydrogens, and oxygens in various bonding situations to form the particular carbohydrate monosaccharide molecule. So the elements in fats and lipids is the next slide that we're going to look at, and there are 2 types of fats. There's what we have called saturated fat, and then we have unsaturated fat. And you can see just in this overview picture that structurally they're shaped differently. So we can see here, as we look at the chemical component of each of those, that there is a difference in the number of chemical bonds between the main element or the backbone element in the structure. So the white element is carbon, the blue element is hydrogen, and the red element is oxygen. And so we can see carbon is the backbone structure of a fat or a lipid, and in the case of the unsaturated fat, it is the hydrogen that has been reduced in number. So a saturated fat has a hydrogen on every single carbon, so it is saturated with carbons, whereas an unsaturated fat, because they have double bonds that will exist between some of the carbon backbone, there are less hydrogens that saturate that particular fat, and so therefore it is unsaturated or has less hydrogens on it. And finally, we have elements in proteins. So proteins are actually made up of short chains called peptides, and those peptides are made up of individual molecules called amino acids. So we're concerned with amino acids and what is in an amino acid, because that would then be the element structure. So an amino acid has a central carbon, and on one side, it has what we call an amine group, and that is made up of nitrogen and hydrogens. And on the other side, we have what's called a carboxyl group, and that is made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And above the carbon, there is always a hydrogen that is bonded to it. Now, this thing labeled R, obviously there's no element that is labeled R. When we talk in more detail about proteins, what we'll see is that this R is just a placeholder for further chemicals, further structures that would be there. But the base structure of the amino acid is going to have the 4 elements, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen on it.